Unusual factor in this case is that every single belonging that we are aware of was located in the residence. So his keys, his cell phone, credit cards, debit cards, wallet, all his identification, passports, anything you could think of, we've been able to locate. None of those items are missing.
Scientists are an incredibly important part of our world and have undoubtedly saved humanity, or at least made living a whole lot easier for many, many years. But of course, scientists are humans, and unfortunately humans sometimes go missing under some very suspicious circumstances. From scientists who disappeared on the job to some who disappeared on vacation, all wrapped up with the conspiracy theories surrounding them. On today's top 10 list, I'll be talking about some scientists who disappeared without a trace. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have BAHADUR BISTA. Dor was a very well-respected anthropologist from Nepal. He was best known for his work with the Takali traders and also for his time as a professor at a university in Nepal. While he was known to go trekking off into the wilderness in order to conduct his research in private, he was, after all, an anthropologist, so he certainly couldn't go totally off the map where there were no other humans at all. In 1995, Dor had published a book and was feeling a little anxious about some of the negative reviews it was getting. Dor was no stranger to criticism or enemies, as many people did not like him due to the fact that he was trying to help empower people who were in a lower class. Before his disappearance, Dor told one of his friends that he was fearing for his safety and that he was considering leaving in order to ensure that nothing bad happened to him. A few weeks after this conversation, somebody saw him boarding a bus, and this was the last time anyone has seen or heard from him. It's obviously very tough to say what happened to him for sure. He had a wife and children who he left behind, and part of me hopes he didn't abandon them, but part of me also hopes he didn't meet some kind of cruel end. I hope that one day someone can figure out what happened and where he went so that his children can be offered some kind of closure. In our number 9 spot today, we have Boris WEISFEILER. Boris WEISFEILER was a Soviet-born mathematician who was living in Pennsylvania. One winter in 1985, he decided to take a nice little trip to southern Chile to do some hiking and escape the bitter cold. Unfortunately, this is where he ended up disappearing. The last time anyone saw or heard from Boris was in January of that year, and not too long after his last sighting, his backpack was found by a river. This discovery had many people speculating that he may have drowned while trying to cross the river, which is just terrible. But since the body has never been found, there are of course people out there who speculate further. Some people out there believe that Boris may have been abducted. Apparently in 2000, there was enough evidence of a kidnapping that 8 different people were actually arrested and charged with the crime. In the end, however, the case was closed due to the statute of limitations, which seems like that shouldn't have been a factor, but I guess it was. This is just one unsolved mystery that I hope one day we find the answers to. In our number 8 spot today, we have ERNST PRIESNER. ERNST PRIESNER was a biologist who was particularly interested in studying pheromones, even more specifically the pheromones of clearwings. His research and studies actually led to the discovery of several new species, and he was able to synthetically create a set of 21 pheromones which was able to attract almost all types of winged bugs. Honestly, I didn't know that this was something that people dedicated their lives to, but it sounds very complicated and kinda cool. In July of 1994, Ernest was collaborating on some research, and he went out to check one of the insect traps that was in the mountains of Garmisch-Partenkirchen, but unfortunately, he never made it back. Search parties were sent out, but no one was ever able to find him, and since he had gone alone, it's not like there was anybody who could testify as to what happened to him. Ernest is sadly still missing today, and I truly hope that one day we find out what happened to him on that day. In our number 7 spot today, we have Natalie Christopher. In August of 2019, an astrophysicist by the name of Natalie Christopher went missing after going out for a run during her visit to a Greek island. Her partner was on the trip with her, and when he awoke one morning, Natalie wasn't in the room anymore. He called her and she stated she was out for a run, which of course is totally normal, but when she didn't return for several hours after, alarm bells definitely began to ring. After contacting authorities, searches began to take place immediately, hoping to find Natalie and bring her home safe. A few few days after her disappearance, authorities explained that her cell phone had been switched off. After police, fire, pedestrian, and helicopter searches, Natalie's body was eventually found. She was found in a ravine that was in a rough mountainous area approximately 20 meters deep in the water. After a full inspection of the site and an autopsy, her injuries were consistent with a fall in which she had suffered a head trauma. This is obviously a very tragic ending to this story, but I am at least glad that her loved ones were able to receive some kind of closure for this terrible situation. In our number 6 spot today we have PENG, JIAMU. The Lochner Desert is known for its aggressive landscape. It has soft riverbeds and sand dunes that are known to shift. It's definitely not uncommon for an entire hillside to collapse, burying everything underneath it. This brings us to June 17, 1980, when PENG JIAMU, who is a biologist at the Shanghai Institute of Biochemistry and Cell Biology, and some of his colleagues were on an expedition in this desert. That morning, PENG noticed that they were running short on some supplies. He left a note stating that he was heading out to look for water, and he left, but he was never seen again. There was a huge search for him that involved soldiers, helicopters, police, and their dogs, but unfortunately neither PENG or his body have ever been found. Many people believe that he may have been the victim of one of those hillside collapses, but in all honesty, it could have been anything. Other expeditions have come across bodies in this desert, none of which have been PENG so far, but I hope that one day someone is able to find him. In our number 5 spot today we have Timothy Cunningham. Timothy Cunningham was a Harvard-educated epidemiologist who worked for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention before his disappearance in February of 2018. He was 35 years old at the time and was working on tackling both the Ebola and Zika outbreaks. On February 7th, he resigned from a special deployment team that he was working with. His boss explained that he would have tried to convince him to stay for a few more months, but that Timothy just seemed too ready to move on. Timothy left work on February 12th saying that he was feeling unwell, but a coworker has since explained that this was shortly after Timothy learned that he was being passed over for a promotion. The day before his disappearance, Timothy told his neighbors that they should erase his phone number from their phones. Searches for Timothy went on for almost 2 months, and during this time authorities found 4 separate bodies that did not end up being Timothy's. Eventually though, Timothy's body was found in a river and it was confirmed that he had drowned. After more investigation, it was determined that Timothy had unfortunately taken his own life. People who knew Timothy began to recount some of the struggles he had that could have led to this extremely tragic situation, but I also think it's worth mentioning that there are many people out there who believe some sort of foul play was actually involved and that it may have had to do with his line of work. It is a very sad ending to an already sad story, and I hope Timothy's family has been able to support each other during these undoubtedly difficult years. In our number 4 spot today we have Percy Fawcett. Percy Fawcett set out in 1925 to search the Amazon jungle for what had yet to be discovered. As an archaeologist and geologist, he was looking for an ancient lost civilization called the Lost City of Z. Percy went on this adventure with his oldest son Jack, one of Jack's friends, and a couple dogs. Unfortunately, after entering the jungle, none of them were ever seen again. No trace was left and no one has been able to find his body, despite it being almost a full century since he disappeared. Some people believe he may have been lost, perhaps he was injured, maybe he even had some kind of fatal animal encounter, but there are some people who believe he just decided to abandon his life to live a life in the jungle. At the end of the day, his lost city of Z kind of did end up existing, as archaeologists have discovered large stone cities that were hidden in the jungle pretty close to where Percy would have disappeared. It has also happened that many people who went on expeditions in this jungle did not end up making it out, so it's probably best to just stay away from that one. In our number 3 spot today we have Suzanne EATON. In 2019, an American biologist named Suzanne EATON disappeared while she was in Greece. Suzanne was a scientist and professor at the Max Planck Institute of Molecular Cell Biology and Genetics in Dresden, Germany, but was in Greece at the time of her disappearance for a conference. On July 2nd of 2019, she was last seen playing the piano in the lobby of her hotel before it was believed she went out on a run, which is the last time she was spotted. It was believed for a while that she may have fallen and injured herself or something of that nature. Of course, authorities began a massive search and it took about a week for them to find anything. On July 8th of that year, Suzanne's body was found in an older World War II bunker and she unfortunately had been killed. This of course turned the search party into an investigation which led to a 27-year-old Greek man who did end up confessing to this very terrible crime. In October of 2020, he was tried and found guilty, which then led to him being given a life sentence in prison. Since this terrible day, the Institute of Molecular Biotechnology in Austria has started a memorial fund in Suzanne's honor, which is aimed to support young scientists' endeavors in interdisciplinary topics. I truly think that this is a wonderful way to remember Suzanne. In our number 2 spot today, we have Vladimir Alexandrov. A Soviet physicist by the name of Vladimir Alexandrov made quite a name for himself when he came up with the mathematical model for nuclear winter. Nuclear winter is what is hypothesized will happen after large-scale nuclear war and firestorms, and it is the long and severe cooling effect that will happen to our global climate. So yeah, he's an important guy, and the concept is just absolutely terrifying. So that's a little bit about Vladimir, and in 1985 he was apparently visiting Madrid when he just up and vanished. No one really knows what happened to him, but there are a couple theories. The first being that since he was in Madrid, he might have chosen to abandon his country, which is why he was never heard from again. The second, crazier theory is that there are people who believe that the whole nuclear winter thing might have just been heavily promoted by Russia in order to convince people in the United States to protest against America and the nuclear weapons program. This theory ends with the KGB kidnapping Vladimir because he was going to expose the nuclear winter theory as being untrue, and they wanted to stop that from happening. I feel like they could have found a guy who actually believed in the theory to say he came up with this mathematical model for it, but hey, I'm not a scientist. Unfortunately, it is likely we may never know what exactly happened to him, unless Vladimir himself ends up finding a way to let us know. In our number 1 spot today, we have ETTORE Majorana. ETTORE was an Italian physicist who was born on August 5th, 1906 and disappeared on March 25th, 1938 under some pretty mysterious circumstances. ETTORE was very gifted with math from a young age, and when it was time for him to attend university, he studied engineering first before making the switch to physics. In 1933, he went to Germany and worked on the theory of the nucleus. In the fall of that same year, he returned home to Italy, but he was very sick. While in Germany, he developed acute gastritis and was also suffering from nervous exhaustion. He was immediately receiving medical treatment, which included being put on a very strict diet. This whole situation led him to become very isolated, and his reclusive nature only grew and grew over the years. For almost full 4 years, he shut himself off completely from friends and wasn't even publishing works. In March of 1938, he boarded a boat from Palermo and was headed to Naples, but he was never seen again. Before he headed to Palermo, he apparently withdrew all of his money from his bank account, and it was said that he had traveled there in the first place to visit a friend, but that friend was actually in California at the time. On the day that he disappeared, he also sent a letter to his boss that was basically just him quitting his job. And he also sent telegrams canceling any other plans that he had made. Some people believe that he may have taken his own life, others believe he escaped to Venezuela or Argentina, some people believe that he was kidnapped, and honestly the list just goes on. I wonder if we will ever be able to find out what truly happened to him that day. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. I've been your host, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye!